How's it going, guys? And I'm here with your review of The Batman. So, some people seem to have a problem with me being a little bit taken aback by the pick of Robert Pattinson in the role of Batman. I was a little bit surprised that people had a problem with being apprehensive towards this and saying, well, I'm not sure if this is the Batman for me. I really liked Ben Affleck in the role, and strangely enough, it seems like Ben Affleck is still going to be Batman following the Flash movie that has been greatly delayed numerous times. But I'm happy to report after seeing this film, The Batman, I am quite pleased not only with his performance, but this movie in general was really a great movie. And it was a much different Batman movie, which kind of made it better for me because this is the one thing that a lot of people seem to kind of overlook. We've had a lot of Batman movies. We have had many iterations of Batman to the point almost where it's comical. And this is what I always like to point out. We've had reboot after reboot, Batman recasting after recasting, and I get it. James Bond has been recasted, but not really kind of at the frequency. When you kind of think about it, you've had just like a handful of Bonds since the 1960s. Here we've had like what fucking like 8 Batmans. It's bonkers, but the movie quality is this good. I I have no qualms about it. I've said this time and time again. If you've got enough time to fill 3 hours, and you better make it effective. And they sure as hell did. I mean, this is a long ass movie, but it doesn't feel that long. It's actually 2 hours and 56 minutes altogether. And when I saw that runtime, I was like, oh shit, I want to have faith this is a good movie. But damn, I mean, if this movie is not great, it's going to be sort of like an Avengers Endgame scenario. I'm like, oh, well, that was good, but they really could have trimmed a lot of shit from that. Now, could they have trimmed stuff from this movie? We'll get to that in a moment. But overall, here comes the praise. The Batman is a fucking fantastic movie. Robert Pattinson really does a great job. Now, he's not really the my ideal look for Bruce Wayne, but in all truthfulness, he's not really Bruce Wayne all that much in this movie. You don't really see him too much out of the costume. Out of those 3 hours, I would say maybe like 20% of it is him as Bruce Wayne. And this is a much more brooding Batman, so it fits into the role. He kind of doesn't have that like exuding confidence when you do see him. He's definitely more brooding when you see him taking off the suit. We see him kind of almost with a goth look. You could say almost an emo look. And this is kind of like what kind of worried me a little bit in the trailer. I was like, they're kind of, I get it. Batman, he's vengeance, he's the knight, but he shouldn't exactly be looking like he's in My Chemical Romance. But thankfully, that's not the case here, folks, because when he's in that suit, not only does he look great, he sounds great. The line delivery is on point. I mean, Robert Pattinson is a great actor, and yeah, he's a great Batman. He did do a really good job here. He did deliver, and I really don't have too many criticisms about him. No, I mean, like when I see Bruce Wayne, do I like him better looking like Ben Affleck, in that way, and Christian Bale? Did I think that maybe they exuded the confidence of Batman in the Bruce Wayne role? Yes, but that's not what they were going for. And since they did want a more dark, brooding Batman, a Batman where you kind of question his motives, we see he's a much more violent Batman. And, what was kind of funny is we saw a more violent side of Batman. This is what I talked about in the trailer too when we saw it. This is what blows my mind about comic book fans and comic movie fans. We see one thing that gets torn apart and then gets praised later on down the line because we've seen this violent side of Batman. Ben Affleck did this in Batman versus Superman. We saw this already, and people seem to really take issue with that. But here, people were happy with it, and they're fine. And I'm happy too because I like this side of Batman. I like the Frank Miller Batman. I like the more violent side of Batman, and but apparently people didn't really catch on to this earlier on, but now they have, so I'm perfectly fine with that. It's just people just try to stay a little bit more consistent. Is all I can say. I mean, it looks kind of foolish when you're kind of praising something that was already done that you'd already previously bashed. But so is the world of comic books. This is one realm where I think it's like ever since the Marvel universe and Disney started bringing this about like the whole all the phases that they had when Disney bought out Marvel. This was the start of the comic fans just running roughshod on the internet, criticizing a whole bunch of people. I mean, you could take a look at my reviews, but that's besides the point. I don't want to get too much into that and like all the nuttiness that goes on when people debate these sorts of movies. But anyway, he delivered. Batman is depicted very well. The suit looks great. I like a lot of these details, like where the batarang is actually a part of his chest. He has all the gadgets. The Batmobile, I was a big fan of this Batmobile. I'm a little bit sorry that we didn't get like a really good clear shot of the Batmobile, but this was like a muscle car Batmobile. This was like a fucking like Mustang Charger Challenger Batmobile. And it looked sort of like something out of Mad Max almost too, and I really enjoyed that. Definitely better. I was not a big fan in the Dark Knight of that Batmobile, that tank looking thing. I thought it looked kind of dumb, to be quite honest. I thought it was a little bit too excessively girthy. And I like this because the Batmobile is supposed to be sleek. Can it be gaudy in certain ways? Like in the Tim Burton films, I like that too. But if we're doing a more simple, more realistic Batmobile, this is where it's at, and I really liked what they did with that. So they had like all Batman's things down here, and he's mostly riding the Bat cycle. If they're even calling that this in the film, or it's just his motorcycle, we see him kind of more effectively using that, and I guess that makes sense because it's more aerodynamic. It's a smaller vehicle. Um, but we have also the villains that we have to talk about. So this movie mostly centers around the Riddler, and man, did they do a good job putting this all together and the whole entire story and all the inner workings and everything that's going on. This is a really well crafted film with a story that is told in a very effective narrative. And that's why I didn't have a problem really with the runtime for this film, because every moment the story is told and it's actually explained very well. And this is something that a lot of people don't seem to really pinpoint with a lot of different movies, especially superhero films. They really sometimes do a shit job of explaining things where they're just kind of like off to the races and like, oh, just figure it out for yourselves, losers. And like, that wasn't the case here. They took their time to tell a story here. We have a mystery, and that is what this movie and they really effectively played off of the fact that Batman is the world's greatest detective, because he comes across as a detective in this film. We see him looking for clues. We see him getting help from Catwoman here, Selena Kyle. We'll be talking about that in a moment. Falcone is involved. We get a little bit of lore with the Maronis. All that is tied in very effectively and explained, and the characters, their dialogue is always like useful in this movie. No one's just saying lines for the hell of it. That are well, where there is a line in there, and I guess you could say like okay, you could kind of see like where this kind of fits in the way, but they had to get that in there right there, and so I guess I'll get it out of the way. So we'll talk about um, Catwoman first. So Zoe Kravitz, who I did not know that this is fucking Lenny Kravitz's daughter, and I'm a big fan of like early day Lenny Kravitz. Nowadays, he really makes some shitty music that's super weird and not my style. But Lenny Kravitz was actually a really good musician for the early parts of his career, and this is his daughter, and does she do a good job as Catwoman? I'm actually going to say yes. I think the performance was really good. It was definitely better than old what's her name in The Dark Knight Rises. She just did a really good job. I thought she was a decent looking Catwoman. She looked good in the suit. She did she did her role effectively, but like this fucking line that they just threw in here about, this city is full of white privilege. And, I kind of get, I feel like the director, Matt Reeves, they told him, the studio says, you gotta get one of those lines in there, one of those buzzwords in there. You gotta slide it on in there. And it's cringe as fuck. Even someone behind me says, "I knew it." Like that, like that. That's what's so funny, because so many people have like caught on to this bullshit that they're like that they pull in these movies where they got to get like these slow narratives. And this is the thing: a lot of people overblow this stuff. I've seen plenty of people on YouTube where they dig so deeply into things, and this is like they even did this like with The Last Jedi. And I think everyone kind of knows like where I stand politically. Even though I try to be careful here on YouTube. But the fucking fact of the matter is, I hate this shit. I hate it more than anyone else. But like, let's be honest. One single line of movie, it doesn't make or break it. Let's be perfectly like serious, guys. Like, if you're going out on a limb and saying this movie's ruined because of one line, then you know what? Go ahead, boycott the film, do what you got to do. But, we got to understand, if we're going to see movies in the 21st century in 2022, we got to put up with a little bullshit. I get it if you don't want to support these kinds of projects, if they're going to like throw that in there, but, you won't be watching anything on TV if that is the case, or seeing anything like in the movies. So there was one line. I think we'll live, I think we'll get past it. We've kind of, grown accustomed to these bullshit things that they throw in there. But yeah, it really stuck out, like unbiasedly. Doesn't matter, what kind of political philosophy you subscribe to. Those lines are cringe, and they have really no place when you slide them in there. The dialogue and the style that we're going for here, lines like that, and kind of Catwoman was kind of going off, and I get it. The people that are rich and powerful, they run Gotham, and everyone underneath suffers. That's like sort of like everything. And I get it. It just didn't feel like it was the right time or place for that sort of narrative, and the way how they phrased it. I don't know. I just found it to be sort of cringy. But she does a very good role, and she does a good job with it. Before we go on to the Riddler, I'll talk about some of the other performances here, because the Riddler, we're going to stay on for it for quite some time. So I'll run through some of these. Andy Serkis is Alfred. He doesn't really normally get as much screen time as we would want, because the Riddler does, unintentionally take him out, during his whole rampage on Gotham City, after opening up a package that was intended for old Brucey. I gotta say, Andy Serkis definitely reminded me of Sean Pertwee. I actually had to write his name down. I kind of forgot, but, when I was watching Gotham, I really liked this, like, more stronger, more, like, confident looking, more exuberant Alfred Pennyworth. And that's what we got here with Andy Serkis. He reminded me of the Gotham Alfred, and I thought that was pretty cool, but there's really not enough to this role really to analyze that much. He's not, when you add up all the screen time, it's not really there. It's kind of like the Alfred from the Tim Burton films. You know, he's there. You know he's there. You sort of like him, but there's not enough really to sink your teeth into. He's definitely not as ever present as, say, Michael Caine. You know, definitely Michael Caine had more screen time than probably any of the other Alfreds. Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant Gordon, because he's not the commissioner yet. I really like Jeffrey Wright in this role. I mean, I thought that this was like a Gary Oldman sort of performance here. You know, he definitely had that likability. You know, because you want to like your commissioner, or in this case, Lieutenant Gordon. You know, because him and Batman are a team. They're a crime fighting team, and yeah, their relationship. It's like, you know, you could see it. It's rocky at times because, you know, Batman is like, this is even a more brutal Batman. So the relationship tends to be rocky at times, but, you know, they always have a common goal: clean up Gotham at the end of the day. And this performance was good. You know, the Gordon performance should be more straightforward and to the point, and I think that Jeffrey Wright got that down quite nicely. Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Uh, you know, he was pretty funny in this role, I have to say. You know, the part where they're interrogating him, you know, when Batman and Gordon have him interrogated, and they have him like tied up, like, and they just leave him there. I thought that was pretty funny. His reactions, you know, I thought it was really bizarre. Like, putting, of all, you know, all the actors, you wouldn't really think Colin Farrell for this role and put him in the fat suit with all the makeup, but he ended up looking pretty good, sounding pretty good in the role. So I thought overall it was a pretty good performance. So everyone really was firing on all cylinders as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I think they built the world of Gotham pretty well here. I mean, it looks good. Everything is, you know, everyone it effectively fits in and is believable. So let's talk about the Riddler and how he factors into this whole thing. Because, dear God, is this a good performance by Paul Dano, or Dano? I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name. I'm gonna say Dano, but you know, you don't really physically get to see the Riddler really when you kind of think about it. You see him mostly kind of communicating through videos and streams when he's leaving behind these clues, or, you know, Batman is talking to him on the phone. He's fucking FaceTiming with the Riddler in certain scenarios. But you know, he captures and kills Gotham's most powerful people. The mayor, he kills this guy, the DA, the current commissioner, all these people, you know, and it's very creepy, very unsettling. This is probably the most unstable Riddler. I mean, you put like Jim Carrey's Riddler next to this Riddler, and I mean, holy shit, is it like night and day? I mean, this is the darkest Riddler probably in all of history of Batman. There's been many different iterations, and judging by which comic books or animated movies and shows that you watch, you'll get a different interpretation of the Riddler. And this, you know, especially when the Riddler finally gets captured, and we see Batman there, like, this scene is so effective, and it might be like probably one of the best scenes in the whole movie. When he is, you know, behind the glass there, and Batman comes from a visit in Arkham, you know, you think this is the end of the movie, that everything is all said and done, and, you know, an argument could be made this is probably where the movie should have ended, and that's where I'm going to get into, like, should this movie have maybe been a little bit shorter, and I'm kind of leaning towards perhaps that they could have shaved the last, you know, 20 minutes, half an hour off of it quite easily and quite effectively, maybe, and maybe produce like a more streamlined product. But anyway, this scene right here, where we get to see him without the mask and the facial expressions finally, because, you know, his face is covered up. You see him just with the glasses. This scene right here, where he's like holding, almost like you want to say holding a note, where he goes, and you think he's just randomly screaming, but it's actually part of the dialogue. This performance right here, especially the part where he, keeps repeating Bruce Wayne's name, because the whole thing that's driving this character is his hatred for the rich and powerful in Gotham. And the fact that Bruce Wayne's father is the driving force, and the false promises. He is talking about that Bruce is the kin of Thomas Wayne, and with that in mind, he is like driven over the edge, and he keeps repeating Bruce's name, and you think right here, especially because in a prior scene when they finally find his apartment, we see a picture of Bruce Wayne and Batman very close together. And like, I love that, like, there's a lot of subtlety here, and Batman, and Gordon are not like, why are these pictures so close together? Like, you don't get any of that nonsense, which is really good subtlety, psychological storytelling at its finest there. And you really think that the Riddler has caught on to who Batman is, and you're like, oh shit. And this is one of the most effective things, even though he's wearing, a cowl on his face. Robert Pattinson plays this so well by parting his lips and the eyes. I mean, oh yeah, that was a scene to remember right there, because you feel it, like you feel a little bit of anxiety there. Like he knows Batman's secret, but it turns out that no, it's kind of just the rantings and ravings of a lunatic. And, sort of, kind of in a strange, sort of weird way, that kind of reminded me of Jim Carrey and Batman Forever. Remember at the end when he's in the cell and he goes, I know who Batman is. Remember that? But then then we see he goes, well, I am Batman. And he's like all dressed up as a bat, and it was kind of just like a humorous scene. But, but Val Kilmer gets taken aback there for a moment. He thinks like, oh shit, maybe he knows who I am. But here was like the more intense, dramatized version of that. And it was so effective. All the drama that's put into this, and it is a very dramatic movie, and very story driven. It never comes off as like cheesy or corny, or maybe a little bit too serious, or too rough around the edges, or too ham-fisted. No, very delicate balance in this film. So anyway, as they're having this conversation in Arkham, this is the part where I said, well, maybe, just maybe they could have shaved this off. And I kind of struggle even here sitting before you saying that perhaps maybe they should have done that, because I mean, I still do like the following scenes that, proceed this. So he kind of just laughs and says, he has something else planned, that this is not the end of it. And he says, and maybe, I was hoping you would watch with me. And he finds out the plans. He goes back to the Riddler's apartment, tears everything up, and he finds the clues that he has placed a bunch of vans all across Gotham, and he blows them all up. Water comes rushing into Gotham, which is that scene right there is was a really good visual. And we've got supposed to be like Madison Square Garden, Gotham Square Garden, and this is where the mayor is like getting elected, the new mayor anyway. And it's these are good scenes, but you kind of feel like they weren't really needed. So there was a bunch of followers on the Riddler's social media account, and they all dress up as the Riddler. They all put on their leather masks and put the glasses over, and they come in guns a-blazing, and they're here to assassinate the mayor and just kind of just take over Gotham basically. And of course Batman and Catwoman thwart them. And it's a good scene, but like this scene kind of like exemplifies like sort of what the movie kind of tried to stay away from. Because when this movie shows you action, there actually, when before this scene, there is really not so much fighting and pummeling people into a bloody pulp. It's not as much of that. That's what makes the violence so effective. It's very few and far between, and when you do see it, it's very effective. You just have to see it. Now, if you're like listening to me say this, you're gonna say, "Well, that kind of sounds a little bit fucking boring." Well, no, it's not, because instead of having it so constant, that to me is the mark of a truly good director. And I think Matt Reeves is a really good director, because he found a way of not having, Batman just, constantly do the da 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 da, and just come in and beat up the baddies every 2 minutes. He actually managed to find a story where Batman could be effective, but he doesn't have to constantly have his fist clenched through like the majority of the film. And it was effectively told. And I kind of feel like the movie devolves into that, like sort of just action film at the end. Uh, but it's still a good scene, and there's good visuals, and that's what I also have to say before like we wrap everything up here in this review. This movie is beautifully shot, so like any faults really kind of go away, because even in the beginning of this film, uh the only thing where I have to say, I was gonna say like the sound is good. I don't really remember too much of the soundtrack. The weird placement of Nirvana's "Something in the Way" was a little bit jarring, like at the beginning and the end of this film. Did anyone else like get that? Who's seen the film? Like why was that song playing? Like it's a more dark and brooding song from Nirvana, and maybe that's what they were kind of going for with the Robert Pattinson style of Batman. But that song just like shouldn't have been there. But anyway, yeah, nothing really was popping out at me, but the way that the movie sounded and looked, and I never really noticed this before with a lot of their films, and maybe it's just me, but whenever they would like shine a bright light, like you went like this in it, and I never really, I think they kind of refrained from that because they don't want to like blind the audience, but I sort of like that because it really like put me in the film. And the other things like that are really like effective, like cinematography wise, is not only the way the fight scenes are shot, where you really get some like good angles in there, but in the beginning of the film where they show like the different thugs out on the street that are running amok in Gotham, they're like looking at like dark alleyways. They're looking at like dark areas where they think that Batman may be, and we hear a good like narration from Robert Pattinson where he's saying, "I can't be everywhere," but like the fear is there, and the way just how they kind of zoom in on that area. Just I don't know, but everything was very visually pleasing to me, and just everything looked good. They seem like they got all the shots at the right angles, and everything is just they kept this movie moving and shot very well all the times. Like there was like just a lot of care put into this film, and I really enjoyed it wholeheartedly. So yeah, there you go, guys. I mean, I was quite pleased. I had some apprehensions about the film, like judging from the trailer. I never said that it looked bad though, but yeah, I was very happy with the way this one turned out. This is, I don't know where it would rank. I see people saying, "Oh, this is better than The Dark Knight." Well, a slower row there. I don't know about that. Is Robert Pattinson the best Batman? Well, there's pros and cons to him. Definitely more pros. The look of Bruce Wayne. Maybe that's perhaps like why they didn't show too much of him as Bruce Wayne, because maybe they knew they didn't get like the most comic book style, cosmetically of Bruce Wayne, but whatever. It was a good performance, and at the end of the day, it is all about the performances. and that's what really drives the film. I mean, we could get someone that looks like the spitting image of Bruce Wayne from the comic books, and we could get a terrible performance. And and that's like no good at all. So there you go. I hope you all enjoyed the review, guys. Please let me know what you thought about the film in the comments down below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bells to get all notifications when I post all my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. And thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time.